What I want to try and do is make it as interactive as you feel able. It's called a workshop. I mean, I think it's that you can take that to be whatever you like, really. But do feel free to jump in with questions, comments, quips, if you like. What I'm going to try and do today is, as the title of the slide says, is talk through our Clean Tech Innovation and Commercialisation Programme, which is a bit of a mouthful. Call it R&D, if you like. First of all, I'm Tim Brooks. I'm from Tesco. I sit in our Tesco property division, which, if you like, on its own is a pretty big company, about 15 to 1,800 people. Our primary function in Tesco property is to deliver property for the business, so delivering express stores in other people's estates, new build stores for ourselves, distribution assets, energy generation assets, etc. If you like, we are a property development company. We sit within Tesco, but we deliver property for the business. So whatever the business wants or needs, we build it and we specify it, we design it, we specify it and we build it for them, obviously using a range of contractors. So just some quick background on where we are and what we're doing. So as you can see there, we have 3 targets for carbon reduction in our estate. So our direct footprint, our suppliers' footprint and our customers' footprint. And I think the slide's a bit disingenuous. I don't really like it because what it sort of implies there is that the customer footprint is huge and it's all our customers' fault, and we don't at all subscribe to that. We're saying that on its own, our direct footprint, 2.6 million tonnes of carbon, is a significant footprint, and that's up for us. It's our direct footprint. It's something that we directly control. Our supply chain is something that we influence, and our customer footprint is also something we influence, but we have less control over. So the number one thing that we work on day in, day out in Tesco property is our direct footprint. Our supply chain is through our retail side of the business, and our customer footprint comes from more of our corporate climate change team. As I say, property, our direct footprint. Now, we have a number of fairly stretching targets, halving our emissions from existing and new buildings by 2020. That's on a 2006 baseline. So it's both halving the emissions of buildings built pre-2006 and halving emissions of buildings built post-2006. So it's 2 slightly different targets there, slightly different ways of looking at the estate. Related to our supply chain footprint, half the distribution emissions per case delivered by 2012, which we've achieved, and to become a zero carbon business by 2050. Now, a whole range of zero carbon definitions. Our definition is that we are zero carbon across the mix, across everything we do throughout the year. Now, 2050 sounds like a long way away, but we're absolutely committed to doing that. We have a glide path in place, we have the funds in place. There are some assumptions made around what technology will do in the future, but that is a genuine commitment to become a zero carbon business by 2050. So working with our supply chain, as I said, our suppliers, so part of that is our distribution emissions per case delivered, but also to reduce emissions totally across our supply chain by 30% by 2020. And there's a lot of programs involved in that, and we can talk at length later if you like, but that's about how do we collaborate with our suppliers, how do we help them deliver those emissions without clouting them overhead with a big carbon hammer and saying you must do this. Obviously we ask them to do it through the supply chain, but there's more of a collaborative approach. And leading a revolution in green consumption, which is helping the customers to halve their carbon footprint by 2020. I think this builds on work that's already out there, but I think probably we would be the first to admit that people like Marks and Spencer's are probably leading the field in that particular area around customer carbon footprint. They have a much better dialogue with their customers, and we do need to get better around that. That's just some background there about the size of the prize. Again, the size of the opportunity. 2.5 terawatt hours of electricity and 1 terawatt hour of natural gas. We've got 2,800 stores in the UK alone. Globally, across group, it's much more. We're employing 500,000 people across the world. And consequently, we have a £20 million CRC exposure, which in the UK equates to over £200 million of energy cost a year. So the size of the prize is £200 million with research and development. That's what we can directly influence. And if you think that for every pound we save on energy, it's £20 of revenue through the tills. So if I can save the business £1 in energy, that means we don't have to go and get £20 of business through our tills, which is a very difficult thing to do in today's climate. So the energy discussion is really starting to gain some traction in businesses like Tesco's, because to get £20 through the tills, we have to do marketing, we have to beat our competition, we have to get customers involved. But I can just save you £1 and it's the same effect on the bottom line. That's how our carbon footprints are broken down on the screen there by electricity. Refrigerants is one that people always forget about, but basically we have a lot of fridge cabinets. They use a lot of high global warming potential gases. For each kilo of gas that leaks from fridges, that can be equivalent to many thousands of tons of CO2. So what we're trying to really do is either swap out those gases into a CO2 base, or we're trying to stop those fridges leaking. We have some very, very good leak detection and remediation programs at the moment, but we're by no means there. But on that carbon footprint, it is really important. Everyone always thinks it's energy, but it's also about refrigeration and F-gas as well, fluorinated gases. How do we deliver our targets? Well, I think there's just a couple of things that we do there. Monitor and measure everything we do. We have half-hourly metering pretty much across all of our estate and in all our stores, and generally sub-metered across most of our equipment, so refrigeration, HVAC, air handling units, etc. Generally all half-hourly metered. We have a big data processing centre out in India, our Hindustan service centre, that spend many, many thousands of hours every year analysing the data, processing it, targeting individual stores. All our set points are dealt with internally with our energy partners, so we can change the set points on all our stores remotely. We design our buildings right in the first place, which I think is always the first, you're probably all familiar with, is the first part. So it's not only meeting building regs compliance, it's driving our contractors, driving our consultants, and driving our architects to go further. But not just further for the sake of it, further at the best cost and the best value for money for the business. Industry-leading research and development, which is what I'll talk about with you today. Energy efficiency improvement year on year, and that comes back to that metric I talked to you about before, about the £1 saving on energy efficiency is £20 through the tills. And if ensuring our energy supplies is as efficient as possible, and that's using things like our own wind turbines on distribution centres, and running CHP. So we've got about 214 CHP gensets across the UK in our estate alone. Reducing F-gas, which I mentioned before, switching to CO2 refrigeration, which is more expensive and runs at a higher temperature and pressure, so it's slightly harder to deal with, and generating and using renewable energy. So that, as I say, that's biofuel, CHP, wind turbines, solar.
How far along are you in terms of getting rid of all your F-gas?
It's an ongoing process, so all of our stores this year will be CO2 stores. In terms of new builds, yeah. In terms of retrofitting, it's obviously a very difficult thing to do, because it means we've got to shut the store down, it means we've got to strip all the piping out, got to put it all back in through the conduits that are existing. So what we're trying to do there in the existing estate is really target leak detection, and on the new estate do CO2. Now obviously, as we can improve that process, we can go back and retrofit, and when we do store refurbs every 5 and 10 years, we look at the opportunities for CO2 there as well. So it'll be a combination. It'll be changing to CO2, and it'll be using different blends as appropriate. I think going back into 2,700 stores and trying to do CO2 overnight, and one of the things that we are very aware of is with our supply chain, is that you can't just give our supply chain a target when you're the size of Tesco, because it'll inevitably fall over. If we said to our consultants and contractors, next week we want you to change over 2,700 fridge systems, there isn't that capacity in the marketplace to do it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're primarily in the existing estate, we're looking at different blends and different gases, but exactly for those technical reasons, trying to get CO2 back in is quite difficult. It's easier with split systems, it's easier with the express stores, it's harder with the bigger stores. Okay, so touching on that and kind of building on that point there is, we build quite a few environmental stores, which are the ones on the left-hand side of the picture there, and they look like an environmental store. They've got wood cladding on them, they've got roof lights, they've got natural ventilation terminals, they've got solar panels, biofuel, CHP, the whole range of equipment. But what we're trying to do is make sure that all our stores are environmental. Just because they look environmental and they've got wood cladding, the point of this slide is that even the ones that don't look environmental, we're making sure we have all those measures in place. And that's where R&D really helps us, because what we're trying to do is challenge our suppliers and work with our suppliers to go back into stores and retrofit, or to make sure that new build stores might look fairly standard but have a range of technologies inside them. Across all those things at the bottom there, the structure, cladding, energy efficiency, the lighting, water, natural refrigeration, and renewable energy. How do we evaluate the technologies that we want to look at? Well, I think the point of this slide is really those things. It's the right technology, at the right scale, at the right speed. And I think we have a range of different approaches to technologies, and sometimes we feel we're quite cutting edge, and sometimes we probably lag behind. And what we're trying to do is find that right balance between being innovators and being on the right risk profile. If we spent lots of money on new technologies, we would soon end up in a tangled web of risk. Because what we have to do there is consider the impact on our customers in terms of how that equipment performs and how we can deliver fairly good performance to our customers with fridges and lighting and heating and cooling, etc. Energy savings, ease of installation, which is a point we just touched on there. Maintenance, which is one that we can often get forgotten about in all kinds of businesses. And working across there in terms of the technologies, the planning risks, fuel supply. It's all very well putting in biofuel CHP, but you've got to make sure you can buy the fuel at the right price from the right places. All the way through to the the financial impacts, the capital, the return on investment, how can we scale it up, and what's the speed of installation. And I think that scalability is a very interesting point, because we often find that the supply chain doesn't have the capacity to deal with the kind of numbers that we talk about. And again, using biofuel CHP as an example, is that often we challenge our suppliers to deliver us a million litres of biofuel. They're just not set up to do that. Just a very quick slide there in terms of the environmental technologies that we're talking about. These are some fairly standard ones that we're well used to. The timber and steel hybrid frame that you'll see in a lot of our new stores, trying to reduce the embodied carbon of our stores and create a better look and feel. Mixed mode ventilation, which is natural ventilation roof terminals, so that's letting in fresh air when appropriate into our stores and venting stale air without the use of mechanical servicing. Roof lights, which our customers really like, and you'll see in that slide top right that there's the bottom of a natural ventilation terminal at the far back of that picture as well. And what we find with roof lights is that if we can get the lighting commissioned properly, then the roof lights are a real proposition, because customers walk in, they like the natural feel of the light, as long as it doesn't overheat too much, and as long as the artificial lighting can be balanced, so we can create an even level of light across the store, it works really well. Clear story glazing, bottom left there, about putting the glazing all the way along the top of the building there to, again, improve the natural light. Biofuel CHP that I talked about, and timber cladding, again, rather than using artificial products, can we get a better look and feel, a better embodied carbon result. So recent technologies we've looked at, and some of them are probably pretty familiar to most of you. Ground source heat pumps, PCMs, phase change materials, which are particularly useful in small spaces like cash offices and IT server rooms. LED freezer lights, which has been an absolute win for us, because LEDs work better at colder temperatures and they don't give off as much heat in our freezer boxes and cabinets. Cold aisle retrieval, that's basically sucking the cold air out of the bottom of the fridge aisles where we don't have doors on fridges, sucking the cold air and using it and pumping it through to the rest of the store on hot days, keeping the cold aisles, or the aisles where the chilled food is warmer, and making sure that the store is cooler where it needs to be. DALI lighting, digital accessible lighting infrastructure, I think is what it stands for, but basically it enables us to control each and every fitting digitally, so that when we have roof lights we can commission the store properly and ensure that we're dimming down lights in the right areas. Rainwater harvesting, it does what it says on the tin. T5 eco tubes, the same. Cold room flip-flap doors, as well as things like doors on fridges, and there's a big commercial and retail debate about doors on fridges. Do they affect retail sales? Do they not? And I think that's something we're still trying to get to grips with, but the point being is they keep the aisles warmer, because the cold air isn't spilling out into the aisle, and we know that customers like warmer aisles. And high-speed back doors and those sorts of things. Again, this is what a timber frame looks like when we're putting it up. Our store build, and this is always got to be borne in mind, that we can build a supermarket in 26 weeks. So when you've got 26 weeks to play with and you've got a range of new technologies, you've got an incredibly tight timescale. And if someone says they've got a ground source heat pump that they want to put in, it's going to take 8 weeks to put in, and that means the car park's out of action. Well, when we're building a store in 26 weeks, we need the car park to put all the plant and equipment on, and all the craneage and all the site offices. So all the technologies have to be borne in mind, that there's not only a cost and a capex and an opex, there's actually an on-site time as well, and that goes for refurbishment as well as new build. Incredibly tight. To build a large format store in 26 weeks is going some, and things have to fit in within that program, because the entire financial model of the store is based on opening on a particular week. The money has been borrowed from the business, the forecasts have been made, and if it doesn't open on that week, you lose money. Couple of early examples of R&D there is when we were working with our suppliers to develop things like CO2 fridge packs, and trying to work out what the best way forward for us is. Is it to develop bespoke systems, or is it to go and buy pieces of kit off the shelf? I think in terms of CO2, our experience of that is the best thing to do is to work with the supply chain and try and buy things off the shelf rather than develop our own.